Ralph, communism will never work in America. America is safe from communism. We talked about this. We talked about the leftist fringe that is popular now in America. In the Democrats, the so-called Democrat Socialists of America, and they're very popular. They're enjoying a moment, and the question is whether they will succeed in the long term. And I'm saying no. Communism cannot succeed in America. It's too extreme. It'll succeed. It can succeed in Europe. Europe has a problem with that, but it cannot succeed in America. Let me tell you why. First of all, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, is a group, an association. Anyone can join. Has a couple of 10,000 members, and a lot of these members are enjoying moments of success right now in American politics. Mamdani, most prominently, won as mayor of New York. He's very much, I would say a communist. You wouldn't say that, but I would. Everyone is, it's extreme socialism. Extreme socialism is communism. A woman in Denver, Colorado, which is usually a fairly conservative, or at least not extreme, won the primary election for either a Senate or a House, a congressional mandate. And so in the election in November, she will probably win against the Republican. She won the primary against a Democrat candidate who is more moderate. And so the actual election is in November, where she will face off with a Republican and probably win, knowing Denver, Colorado. There's a mayor in Seattle who is a proclaimed socialist in the sense of extreme socialism. There is another, I guess, House of Representatives, maybe a senator candidate on the left who is slated to win in November. A Chevalier who tweeted in the past things that she thinks America, should die. Israel has no right to exist. We have to abolish capitalism, etc. So these are extreme. Socialist, communist, heading toward totalitarianism standpoints. And you mentioned Graham Plattner. I looked it up. Graham Plattner is not officially a part of the DSA, of the Democratic Socialists of America, but of course his rhetoric is. He's very much against capitalism. He flirts with extreme socialism or communism. He has a Nazi tattoo, and of course Nazis are National Socialists. Or he allegedly has a Nazi tattoo. It was a Totenkopf tattoo or something similar to that. So, but whatever, it doesn't matter. And so these extremists are popping up here, and they are identified with the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. AOC is Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is also a member, apparently, according to Wikipedia. Look up on Wikipedia, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, and there's a list of the members, and or of members who are serving public office, and it's frightening people how this is coming out of the woodwork, how this is suddenly becoming a big thing, and people are wondering: will communism come to America? Will it come to America and destroy America like it destroyed most of Europe? Will it turn America into a totalitarian state? Okay, that's a question. It's kind of frightening that it's suddenly so popular, but I'm here to tell you that it will not work. America will let it have its moment, but America will reject it in the end for two reasons. First, the first reason is that look at who's voting for them. If you look closely at how they won, in what sections of their states or their districts they won, the people who were voting for them were districts like more than 50%, not all people, but 70% of them were white, wealthy, and this is according to the districts that voted for them. Okay, so we're looking at districts, voting behavior in certain districts. In the poor working class districts, fewer people, less than 50%, less than 30%, 40% voted for them. So that they did not really impress the working class, who they profess to be saving. They're saving the working class. They do not get many votes from minorities, from blacks or from Latinos. They get votes from whites, from wealthy whites, from highly educated whites, from students in elite colleges, which are only the rich can go to, and where, of course, this fake communism, liberalism, leftism is preached all the time, constantly, and very young people meaning they haven't quite. They're not raising a family yet. They don't know what it means to pay taxes. They're not yet in this position of high responsibility, which tends to turn people conservative once they have to pay taxes. And so their constituency is a certain class of people who do not represent the broad general average American. The broad general average American tends to be more or less working class, more or less rural, so not highly educated enough, but not highly educated. They're business people or farmers or workers, and not theorists. There's an old saying that presidential elections in America are won on the countryside. And that's basically true. And even our electoral college is weighted for that. So people, states with a lot of land, a lot of rural population have slightly more electoral power than equivalent states with cities and rural population who tend to get rich and go to big colleges and become intellectual theorists and lose contact with reality. The rural population of America tends to be very much working class, working also in the sense of I have my own business and I'm down in front of the counter, 24 hours a day. They tend to be family oriented. They tend to have some kind of American ambition in the sense that I want to make something out of my life and I want the freedom to do that. And if you drag me down by making me responsible for other people's decisions, then you're hindering me on fulfilling my American dream, and I'm not going to vote for you. That tends to be the and they tend to be also kind of moderate, not extreme. So that tends to be who decides the presidency. First, there's that. Secondly, we have a history of not really going all the way with extremists. We vote extremists in for a while. We flirt with extremism on the right and the left, and then we back away from it. We will go to the extreme on one end and then swing back to the extreme on the other end. We're always kind of going toward the middle. And if you look at the presidents we voted for the last, let's say, since Kennedy, I counted since I wanted to compare the presidents we voted for with the Bundeschancellors that the Germans vote for since 1949, since the end of the war, since the first German election. So since 1949, if you look at those elections, or was it Kennedy? It's somewhere around there. I compared them. In Germany, they tend to vote 2/3 conservative, so it's more conservative, and 1/3 liberal or leftist. They tend to be more conservative. Americans are 50-50. We go 50% conservative, we go back to the other side, 50% leftist. It's back and forth, 50-50. We are looking for the middle point. We're trying to take the best of the extreme. We're flirting with the extreme all the time on each side, but we go back to the practical, what is this really going to mean for me and my family in the middle. We don't really go all in for extremism. And I have two examples, okay? One on the left and on the right. So on the left, we had in the 70s, we had McGovern. McGovern was the best, the highest, the most popular Democratic candidate for president. He was extreme left. His rhetoric was very left. He made a lot of missteps in his campaign. And he happened to be going up against Nixon, who was a tough competitor, right? So Nixon tore into him, ripped into shreds for all kinds of stupid things he did in the campaign, including choosing a loser for vice president. Okay, but he was also extreme left. He wanted to create a universal basic income. He was for the universal basic income, which is an idea that goes back to the beginning of America in 1776. There were people who wanted a universal basic income, and people looked at that and said, "Well, wait a minute. So we're paying. So if I work, because I have a family and I need more than $1,000 a year, a month to raise my family, so I have to work. I'm paying for the other guy who has no family, no responsibility, who doesn't have to work, so he can sit down and write his great book. That would be me. I would love universal basic income. I would love it. I'm not doing that." And so he was gone. He did not win. He was too extreme. And after that, the Democratic Party kind of went back a little bit toward the middle. And now it's swinging back to the extreme fringe, and the same thing is going to happen that happened to McGovern. That's my prediction. It happened on the right also. My best example, my favorite example, is David Duke. David Duke was and is an extreme right-wing white supremacist neo-Nazi, basically. And he's a real right-wing. He's a real right-wing extremist. We talk about Trump as a right-wing extremist, but he's not. He's never said anything about, he's never said fascism. He doesn't want, complete control of the state. He's never, said anything that makes him a white supremacist or a racist or anything like that. He said, yeah, the Democrats are going too far. We have to correct what the Democrats are doing. We have to get rid of this DEI and all that stuff. But that's not actual right-wing extremism. If you want a right-wing extremist, you got to go to David Duke, who was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. That's how right-wing he is and was. And he made it in Louisiana as far as the House of Representatives in the 70s. No, that wasn't 70s. That was 90s. That was like 89 to 93, 92, something like that, on the 80s to 90s. And then suddenly, as soon as he was in the House of Representatives, suddenly he was on the national stage, and people kind of turned and said, "Oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? What's going on in Louisiana? Look, who's this guy?" And so people started noticing him. He became a public discussion. When that term was over, he was gone. He voted out. He never had, his political career was over. As soon as he got onto the national stage as a extremist, as a right-wing extremist, as a white supremacist, a real extremist, as soon as he got onto the national stage, they said, "Nope, not doing this, no." And they got rid of him. We tend to get rid of our extremists. We do not follow them. Unlike, you guys in Europe, you're all in, Here comes Hitler. That's a great idea. Let's kill 6 million Jews. I love it. No, we don't do that. We make lots of mistakes. We do a lot of terrible things, but we swing back. We correct ourselves. And that's because of the heart of America is in the heartland and in this idea that you take responsibility for your family. You are responsible for your family, and the state is not, or is less responsible for it. You depend on yourself and on your friends and your community, and not on the state. And you have an ambition to become something more than you are, and no one can interfere with that. No one has the right to interfere with that. The state does not have the right to interfere with that. And that's the basic core idea of America. I could be wrong, but I think it's still there. I'm sure it's still there. We've always gone off on tangents and come back to who we are. And we will come back to who we are after the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, have come and gone, after Mandami has had his 4-year experiment in New York. God bless him. A lot of things he says is right and true. Everyone before him completely ruined New York. But unfortunately, New York has a way of ruining its mayors and it's the politicians who serve the city. And he's not going to come out. Chances are, the statistics say that he's not going to come out looking good after this. But maybe he will. Give him the chance. God bless him. Go for it. But America doesn't tend to go all the way with the extremes. So I'm not worried.